Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I want to thank you for attending this really good session this morning. Dustin's been here before. He's one of our most popular presenters in the Family Central series, so welcome, and you're in for a treat. He is a living embodiment of good management, good business, and you're going to hear a lot of good things this morning that you can take back and use right away in your places of business. So we've got a lot to go over, and without saying too much more about Dustin, how great he is, I'm going to let him prove it. So Dustin, thank you for being here. We have chicken biscuits back here, so don't forget to get one before you leave.
Yes, you got one, please. Feel free. Thank you. Debbie's too kind. So, yeah, lots to cover, and hopefully it'll be beneficial. That's my goal. My hope is that you walk out with really something that you can take back and apply to whatever organization or other opportunity you have before you. So, my name is Dustin. I'm the operator of the Chick-fil-A location on Wall Road. My two main jobs are to grow the business and to grow people. That's what I do. And so, to kick off, what I'd like to do is start with just some guiding principles, just kind of overarching themes and thoughts that may be coming through as we go through the presentation. I'll try to limit my remarks to 40-45 minutes and then leave some time at the end for questions. We'll try to have you out by 10:30, hopefully. So I got a clock, so it's good. Good to see you. So first thing is, what I'm going to share, I love feedback, and I love getting feedback. And one of the things I've been told in all my various 360s and all kinds of things is sometimes I speak as if it's true and this is the only way. So that's my first disclaimer, is that if I get emphatic or passionate, this is just based on my learning, my trial, my error, lots of error. And what I'm going to share is just based on my experience. So again, it may or may not fit, it may or may not work, but hopefully there's something that will be applicable. Secondly, I want to be clear and make sure that everybody understands that what we talk about today can be applied to your situation. So we're in the first world. So that being said, there's obviously a totally different set of standards for life in the third world or in other places. But for most of us, we have lots of choices. And so when you think about the choice, let's just say the choice of the car you own. Why did you ultimately buy that car? There were some factors maybe. Price, convenience, is it what I was looking for that fit my family, all of those kinds of things. But ultimately, if you put, a vomit green car next to a baby blue car, everything's the same except for that one thing. My opinion is that what ultimately drives you to decide one vehicle or the other is how you feel when you get into it. Especially with your home. Think about that. You have two homes that are the exact same. They both have everything you're looking for. But when you walk into one and then you walk into the other, ultimately it's like, I feel like this is home. And so, what I sell at Chick-fil-A is not chicken. I sell feelings. And I would submit that whatever industry, whatever group, whatever you do, at the end of the day, what causes customers to choose you is how you make them feel. So we all sell feelings at the end of the day. Third, I'm going to talk a lot about organizations, a little bit about leadership, but I want to kind of disclaim that organizations, no matter how big or how small, no matter the size, the kind, the type, anything like that, they're living and active. They're not just static, set of mission values, org structure, everybody goes, punches in, does their job. Organizations are alive, and they take on and embody, ultimately, in my opinion, the leader of that organization. And I think that applies to businesses, it applies to families, it applies to churches, it applies to even departments or you and one direct report. It applies. And so a lot of what we'll be talking about today, we'll kind of be looking at through that lens of just organizational leadership and how do you get organization to do what it is that you want it to do. So, I think that's all my guiding principles. So let's jump in. So I'm often asked this question, especially with Chick-fil-A. I mean, we've been very blessed to have been awarded lots and lots of customer service awards, and my hope is that you've been able to come into a Chick-fil-A restaurant and have a positive experience, especially compared to maybe other restaurants, other competitors. But I always get asked this question: what's the secret to service at Chick-fil-A? What is it? Oftentimes folks try to throw out their thoughts. Is it your training? It's got to be the training program. It's got to be the, how do you get some great people and you pay a lot? That's what it is. And so there's all kinds of theories as to why. So as I have thought about this question, mulled over it for a while, I have an answer that I'll share with you today. But we're not the only ones asking this question. It's a very common and popular question today. So John DeJulius owns a series of restaurants, I think, in the Cleveland area and throughout, well known for his hospitality, well known for his customer service. So he's written that book, The Customer Service Revolution. Those of you that, and I'll compliment Mercedes-Benz of Port Mitchell. I have a Metris that we drive around and deliver catering food to, and I picked it up there. And they did, when they delivered the vehicle to me, it was a surprise to my catering director. And they got this huge red cloth for me, covered it, and I brought her there. I forgot what I did live, but I told her some other reason why we were going there, and which is true. And then she stood in front of the thing, and they pulled the curtain off, and like, Julie, and it was just a great experience. It was a memorable experience, and she was super excited because she was driving around this clunky cow van, that 1994 Nissan Quest. So she was excited, and Mercedes helped pull that off, like joyfully and willingly, and made us feel great. So Mercedes is an example. Again, what's the secret? Everybody wants to know what's the secret. Nordstrom, I read a story this morning about a gentleman who went to a Nordstrom and was buying a suit or something and lost a couple of pendants in Nordstrom. Looked for an hour, tried to find it, couldn't find it. A couple weeks later, Nordstrom sent him 2 brand new pendants. So neither did he didn't buy those pendants at Nordstrom. But they tried, they couldn't. So Nordstrom even not only corrects their own mistakes, they correct the customer's mistakes. I mean, that is a level of customer service that is unprecedented. And by the way, he found them in the story. He said he found them a few months later and then sent Nordstrom the money back. So, but who does that? Who pays for the customer's mistake? And then Starbucks, how you turn the ordinary to the extraordinary. So lots of books have been written about the secret to service, customer service. But for me, what's the secret to service, I think it requires a more basic question, a more deeper question, a more organic. And so, what's the purpose of good customer service? I think you got to start there. Why should we seek to deliver good customer service? And here's the answer that I came up with. Caring for people, the purpose of good customer service is to care for people in such a way that they become intrinsically compelled to return. And ultimately, they attract others in that process. So in my opinion, in my experience, that level of care for people is what drives it. There's an internal compulsion. And you don't have to even ask them to come. You don't have to invite them to come back. You don't have to offer a deal or a special to bring them in the door again. That experience that they have and how you made them feel just compels them. And I think that ultimately is what good service is about. It's caring for people in a way that compels them to return. So back to the question. What's the secret to service at Chick-fil-A? And so as I've thought through this question, I think about it in terms of like a sweater that I'm unraveling. You have one little string, you start pulling the string, and it just kind of takes you on a journey until the very end of the string, and it unravels till you get to the heart of it. And so I'll walk through sort of my thought process as far as what is it at Chick-fil-A. So the first kind of step that I've thought through as far as how do we deliver these moments of care, these great moments of service to people, is that when we refer to good customer service, I think we generally talk about, oh, they have good service, but when you drill down and get specific with people, they're going to attach that belief of good customer service to probably one, maybe two moments that they had, one or two experiences. And I brought a book, it's way over there, but it's called The Power of Moments, written by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. And as a side note, anything written by anybody from Stanford School of Business is phenomenal. I'm going to refer to two books today, but those guys taught at the Stanford School of Business in California, are associated with the school out there, phenomenal. But they did a ton of research, and if you think about your last vacation, especially those of you that had kids, and this is an illustration that they have in the book that kind of supports their theory about the power of individual single moments. So when you're on vacation with your family, and it could be older kids, if you were to rank your mood throughout like every hour of the vacation, you're going to see 9s, and you're going to see 2s, and you're going to see 4s, and you're going to have all this data. But the further you get out from it, you're going to remember less and less of those individual, and you're going to remember probably two things of the whole. I mean, you could spend a week at the beach, and a year later, you're going to remember probably one or two things. You're going to remember maybe the super high or the super low. And that's the power of moments. So, in my opinion, great customer service, it is something that can be overarchingly described towards someone or towards an organization, but it really is about moments, creating these little moments. Secondly, those moments are not, I think occasionally you'll have that one moment where the stars are aligned and the right team member is serving our guests, the right guest comes in and they had the right experience prior to coming, and they just say the right thing that touches that right at that exact moment, and boom, it's awesome. Like that happens, but it's like 1% of the time. The rest of the time, these moments occur in a very intentional way, in an environment that is engineered to produce. Now, these moments are not engineered moments. The environment is engineered so that these moments organically happen, and they're very intentional. The third kind of thought, so we have these moments, we have these folks that are delivering these moments, but let's talk about the environment that these folks operate in, that provides the platform for these individuals to create these moments. So this is a picture of the Dwarf Grill in Atlanta, Georgia, the very first Chick-fil-A restaurant, the very first Drew Cathy, our founder, his first restaurant, the Dwarf House. That's a picture of the counter. And I think organizations that have figured out how to deliver these moments, it's directly tied to the belief that what happens on this side of the counter is incredibly connected to what happens on that side of the counter. That it is nearly impossible to be able to deliver consistent, intentional, genuine moments of care if the people who are delivering those are not cared for themselves. And so culture plays a huge role in the ability to create these great moments. But we're pulling the sweater. It's not just the culture. I think there are elements. So there are elements that help pull this culture together and maintain this culture that ultimately produces these moments. And some of the elements that, at least in my business, that exist, they're vision. You have to have a clear vision that is customer service oriented, that points and directs all the work and effort to caring for people. It needs to be inclusive of that. You do have to select people that actually care about people. If they don't like people, they're not going to have those genuine and proactive and personal moments of care with people. So it does matter who you bring on to deliver these moments. There does have to be some training. People don't come in knowing how to make people feel like $1 million. You have to teach them how to do that, and there has to be processes, and there has to be good training materials. So that is a necessary element. There has to be clarity. This is how we do it. This is how we don't do it. Really clear standards is another important element. And finally, accountability. When those things are not happening, somebody has to say, you either need to do it, or maybe this is not the right opportunity for you, and move them on to somewhere else. And it has to be bold, and it has to be fast. So those are elements that are necessary to create this culture that produces these intentional, very powerful moments of customer care. But when we get to the end of the sweater, my conclusion and kind of all that process of thought is that it really comes down to just one idea, and maybe even just one person that is able, that we could potentially call the secret to service. So in my opinion, and in my experience, the secret to service is leadership. But I think that doesn't go even further. We're still not at the end of that thread yet, that yarn. It really goes to your leadership. And again, this applies to you, no matter if you have direct reports, if you don't. It's some of it's your own self-leadership. I mean, we all interact with people to some degree, whether it's our direct reports, whether it's our superiors, whether it's our customers, and how we lead ourselves, how we manage ourselves, is a significant part of it. But I think if we get even specific, it's you. The secret to service is you. It's me and my organization. So that sounds pretty simple. We're done, right? Secret to service, you. Have a good day. If it's this simple, how come there's so much bad service everywhere? Why? And how come, my organization, sometimes we have bad service? Why? Well, the reason, in my opinion, is because there's a little problem. And when you're driving down the road and you want to change lanes, and you look in your rear view, and you look in your side, I'm good. And you start to go over, and all of a sudden you hear horns, hey, yelling and get winds down, and you get back over, and then you look over your shoulder, like, where did that guy come from? It's a blind spot. That's why we don't always do this, because there is a gap that exists between how we see ourselves and how the people around us see us. That's the blind spot. That's the gap. That's the reason why we may not achieve what we want to achieve as far as related to customer service in our organization. Another great book I read called Good Boss, Bad Boss. And some of you may be bosses, some of you may not. I'm pretty sure almost everybody works for a boss, Gene. But this book, Good Boss, Bad Boss, has some phenomenal principles that I think apply to even how you relate to customers. And so self-awareness, to me, is the ultimate answer to this problem. So when you think about how do we create great service, you go all the way to the root. It's how aware am I of how I make other people feel. Self-awareness. And I submit to you that self-awareness changes lives. The more aware of yourself you become, and if you seek to become aware of how you impact and influence the people around you, just by how you behave and how you speak, it can change the lives of the people around you, and it can change your own life. So I've got this quote here that came from this book that just summarizes, it was one of the best summaries I've read about this idea of self-awareness. It says, if you're a boss, your success depends on staying in tune with how others think, feel, and react to you. Bosses who persistently promote performance and humanity devote considerable energy to reading and responding to followers' feelings and actions, and those are the key players like superiors, peers, and customers, which I'm sure we all have. Superiors, peers, and customers. Developing and sustaining self-awareness ought to be at the top of the list for every boss. And I think you could just substitute boss with every person who's delivering customer service, whatever degree that is. So if you're a boss, you may not be dealing directly with the customer, but you're dealing with the people potentially who are dealing with the customer. And that influences the customer service that your organization is going to be able to deliver. And so he also submits an acid test. So how do you know if I'm the right boss, if I'm the right salesperson, if what I'm doing is working? And so he gives two questions. So number one, do people want to work? And again, there's that idea of want. Want is not necessarily a formula that you can just step right into and, yes, if I do this, this, and this, boom, I'm going to get the results. No. Those of you with children, to get kids to do what you want them to do requires an incredible amount of skill and patience and a long suffering, a measure of long suffering. So, do people want to work for you or with you? So if you're in sales, do people want to work with you? And would they enthusiastically choose to do so? Would they enthusiastically choose to do so again? That's a great question. And probably a question you're not able to answer yourself. You're going to have to get other people around you to answer that question for you. But the second question, are you in tune with what it feels like to work for you? Again, there's that word, feeling. Are you in tune with what it feels like to work for you, or to work with you, or to be one of your clients? So, those two questions to me are the ultimate questions for how do you know how big's my gap? We all have gaps, but that's the ultimate question: how big's my gap? And so my thought process is the more, and I've got a gap. My team will tell you, my wife will tell you, my kids will tell you. I've got a gap, and I believe that the more work I put into closing that gap between what I see of myself and what others see of me, that translates to being able to execute those elements, which creates the culture, which creates those intentional moments of genuine care for the customer. So, now what? Now that you know you got a huge gap, what do you do with it? Where do we go from here? And so I'm going to do two things real quick before we do questions. First, I'm going to talk a little about leadership. How do we become the right leader that is able to create this environment and lead this culture that creates these moments of care? And then I'm going to share with you some specific things in my organization, what we do to cultivate this environment. Again, these apply for me and my organization, but hopefully there's some ways that you could, lessons that you can take from this. So the first thing is leadership. So at AAA, we have a leadership model. It's called the SERVE model. It's based on the Bible. As many times Jesus said, whoever wants to be first needs to be last. Whoever wants to be great must be a servant. And it's this idea of servant leadership. It's elevating others ahead of your own interests and ahead of yourself. That counterintuitive thought of when I put others first, I actually eventually get what I want, but so do they. And so we have a model for this servant leadership, and it goes down the acronym, so I'll just briefly touch on the SERVE. So the first part of our model is servant leaders see and shape the future. So there's an ownership of the organization, there's an ownership of what you want to happen over time. And in my opinion, the servant leader is not just interested in pursuing a better future for themselves. The servant leader is interested in ensuring that future is beneficial for everybody involved. And oftentimes that means a little bit of a personal sacrifice on the leader to not get everything that they want. And that's the servant element of that. So being able to see what can the future look like and have the ownership of ensuring that that is the best future for everybody, not just me. That's the first principle. Second, engage and develop others. And it's this idea that you alone don't have what it takes. You need other people. It requires a level of humility to admit that. We think we're good, and yeah, these people are around trying to help me, but if I wasn't here, they would fall apart. And the servant leader has a humble attitude that recognizes that I need the people around me. I have strengths that are good, but I have gaps. I need them to tell me my gaps. I need them to be strong where I'm not. I need people. And so they intentionally reach out and engage and develop people. Third, servant leader reinvents continuously. And again, there's a humility recognizing that what got me to where I'm at today may not get me to where I want to go. That I have to change. I may have won all kinds of awards. I may have hit all kinds of crazy milestones in sales or in people development, or I may be the C whatever of my organization. But what got me here won't get me there. And I have to be open and willing to hear what is it that I need to get me forward. Fourthly, servant leaders value results and relationships. That one of those is not sacrificed at the expense of the other. Results are important, relationships are important. And I'll camp here for just a second. So the way that I see this one is that learning that true care for people is not fear-based. And I'll illustrate from my own life. So my worst year in business was 2016. A series of things happened that year. My business results were terrible, and the result of the terrible business results led to a very difficult decision in my career that was made on me. So anybody had somebody make a hard decision that limited you from a promotion? It's hard, especially when you think you should have gotten it, right? So as I reflected on that decision, I reflected on that year and that difficult year, one of the things that I realized is that I did not engage in the results part of my business because I was afraid of, I had a general manager I was afraid of. Like, I wasn't afraid that he was going to hit me, but I was afraid of standing up to him. I was afraid, and he worked for me. I was afraid of tension, I was afraid of conflict. I was afraid of those things. I had a vendor that I was afraid of at the same time. I was afraid of stepping on his toes. And, if I had to make a hard decision, it would have a negative effect on his family, and I didn't want that. I was afraid. But unfortunately, what happened, because I valued the relationship over the result, I missed out on a significant opportunity for myself and for the people that stayed with me after this decision was made. So there's about 100 people working me now. Like, there's an opportunity that's missed for them too. And so if I truly care about people, I have to own up to the fact that I cannot let fear determine if I'm going to fall, and usually fear that pushes you one way or another. You're afraid of people, or you just don't care about people. You're afraid of opening up, and so you drive on the results. And so true care for people, servant leader realizes that true care for people sometimes requires hard decisions and for you to do hard things because it's ultimately best for yourself, your family, and best for everybody. The final principle is embody the values. So a servant leader walks the walk that they talk. So values are, every organization has values, but they're often underutilized and misunderstood. I mean, values, what they are attitudes or behaviors, attitudes or beliefs that show up in how you behave. So the leadership thinks that, the organization thinks these are the important ideas or beliefs that will guide our work, and so they show up in how you behave. So the servant leader, if I came to you guys and said, I told in front of you, all of you, I'm a very frugal person, and I value making sure that all my dollars are spent wisely, and I'm generous. But I'm standing here in an Armani suit, wearing, having a $200,000 Rolex with Italian leather shoes. You're going to have a hard time believing me because the decisions that I've made and the actions that I've done don't quite reflect what is the generally accepted idea of frugality. So that's what values are. So servant leaders are very careful to say, hey, if this is important, I live that way. You can see it show up in my life. And so as a summary of the servant leader, the servant model, The servant leader builds trust, and that's really what acting out on all of those things, on all 5 of those principles are about, is you're building trust with your clients, your customers, your peers, your direct reports. You're building that they can trust you that what you say you're going to do, you do, and that you ultimately have their best interests in mind. So the servant leader builds trust by selflessly caring for other people, putting others first ahead of themselves. And this is the cool thing about servant leadership, is that when it's done appropriately, when it's done with humility, it ultimately becomes an uncontrollable force for good. And that force has a positive effect on the lives of employees, customers, and ultimately on you. And then the actual cool thing is, like, great business results are a byproduct. They come when you focus on the right thing, you focus on people, and you focus on caring. So, elements. So I want to give you a few quick examples in each of these elements that we try to employ in our business to help us deliver these great moments of care. And so vision. So the vision for my restaurant is to be a place where people line up to get in and don't want to leave. That's what we try to create every day. And a vision statement, the way I use that word is that it's that preferred future that you can't really measure and say, dude, we're done, vision realized. But it aligns all the work after that. So if I have a mission statement, if we have values, if we have actions, if we have tactics, all of that aligns under this goal, under this vision of being a place where people line up to get in and don't want to leave. And I apply that with customers, with guests, and I apply that with team members. So from the customer side, I want to be a place where customers line up. We have lines. If you haven't been to a Chick-fil-A before, we have lots of lines. And so I wish I didn't have lines. I would love to not have lines that would serve everybody fast, but sometimes you get lines. So our hope is that for customers, they're willing to line up because they know what they're going to get when they come, and that it's worth the wait at Chick-fil-A. At least at my restaurant, it's worth the wait because of what you know you've gotten elsewhere. That's worth the wait. You're willing to line up to get in, and you don't want to leave. So there's a vibe in our place that it's like you feel a little bit at home, like you feel good. You're cared for. There's genuine care. So that's the guest side. On the team member side, and I have to have that cultural element there too. So I want to be a place where people line up to apply and don't want to leave. And the line up to apply is very self-explanatory, but the don't want to leave piece. So I have team members. Some team members have been with me for 10 years, and I have some team members who have been with me for a couple of months. And my goal is to treat them in a way where when it's time for them to leave, they do it because they're moving on to a better opportunity. They're moving on to something better for themselves or their family, but they don't want to. There's a desire like, it's a sad day. It's not like, they're out. That it's a sad day, and they work the notice because they just want to hang on the last little bit. And we celebrate transition. That's one of the greatest joys of my job, is to be able to launch people into the next step in their career that will either provide them the finances they need, provide them the opportunities they need to build their family the way they want to build that moving forward. So that's our vision. We talk about it a lot. We share with it all the time. We share with our team all the time. So it's important to the vision that there is a customer service focus in that, a care for people focus, if you want the rest of your organization to do that, to be able to execute those moments of care. All right, the selection process. So yes, you have to select people that care for people. And so you're getting a twofer on this one. So this is one of our, care shows up in behavior. You can say you care for people all day long, but if you don't behave in a way that you care for people, you don't care for people. Sorry, you gotta face that truth. You gotta face the reality. So we have what's called the core four, and the core four is a set of behaviors that we teach that when executed with a guest is designed to help them feel cared for. So the symbols there, the first one is creating eye contact. People are, they feel like you're engaged when you look them in the eye, as opposed to, you know, I mean, you can really care, but if you're doing this and you're not really, we care, and you're not looking at people, they're not going to feel it. It's all about, it's not about the behaviors, it's about doing it in a way that they feel it. They have to feel it. So creating eye contact, sharing a smile. And this is not, walking around, with a big smile on your face, but it's a pleasant demeanor. It's an uplifting look to your eyebrows, and it comes from a genuine, I don't hate being here. This is nice. I like this. The third is speaking with enthusiastic tones, so being mindful of the tone and the inflection of how you use it. If it's a positive, uplifting, people feel cared for. They feel like you're engaged. They feel like you're there with them. They feel like you're excited to be in that moment. But if you talk in monotone, you can smile all day long and just talk. It's my pleasure. It doesn't do it. And then the heart represents staying connected to make it personal. So trying to eliminate all the other distractions from that moment, and what we teach our team members, that moment with that guest, and just make it about them. Like, they're the only ones there, even though there's 50 people behind them in line, and that's our biggest fight is team members not getting stressed out that there's a line. Forget about the line. Just focus on that person in front of you. Stay connected to make it a personalized experience. If you see something on their shirt, call it out. Hey, you work at the animal hospital? Oh, cool, something like that, where there's a personal connection. So, from a selection process, this is what we expect our team members, this is how we expect them to behave when they're on the floor. If we don't expect all of these to show up in an interview. When they do, we're like, yes, you're hired right away. But if they don't show, if none of these show up in an interview, the interview is the dating. When you date somebody, that's the pinnacle. That's when you're trying to get in, and that's when you're at your best. So once, you put the ring on, that's when everybody kind of relaxes a little bit. So if they're not demonstrating any of these in the interview process, it's highly unlikely that they're going to demonstrate that when they're standing in front of a guest. So we look for some of these elements, and even in a raw form, we look for potential material or potential. All right, so training. How do we train our team members? And we do a lot of things to train, but there's one thing that I'll share with you is called the mood meter. And this is a process that we train our team members to observe a person, take in all kinds of subjective data about them, so their facial expression, their tone of their voice, if they're carrying a bag, if they're in a rush, their pace, and then objectify that into a scale so that you can figure out where would you rate them on the scale, and then you modify your behavior to meet them where they're at. That's another way that people feel cared for, is by you adjusting yourself to them. Not you're up here and it's like, if a guest comes in and they just put their dog of 12 years down and they Chick-fil-A's the stop after the vet, they're at 1. And but we want to be happy. Hey, welcome to Chick-fil-A, and we're coming at them like that. Like, they're gonna feel uncared for because we didn't take the time to recognize. And we don't have to ask, we don't have to know the details, but people, you can see it. We didn't take the time to stop and see where they're at. So we teach the mood meter. Put them, if they're at a 1, we're not going to come at them at a 1, 2. We're not going to come around and cry and hand we're done. We may come at them at a 2 or a 3. So adjust maybe 1 or 2 notches up, just to provide a little bit of positivity, but also empathize with where they're at. All right, from a clarity standpoint, super, super important to be clear. Part of behind the idea of clarity is that a belief that when it's clear about what's expected, that people actually want to meet expectations. Oftentimes we think that they don't, but because when people aren't performing well, I would say 80% of the time, performance is related to a lack of clarity. So it's actually my fault that they're not performing well because I was not super clear about what's expected, and I didn't reinforce that over time. So a couple of things that we do from a clarity standpoint. Anybody heard of Ritz-Carlton hotel chain? Cor Schultz, he's the founder. He's a good friend of Chick-fil-A, speaks quite often at some of our conferences. He spoke a year ago, and there were two things that he said that smacked me across the head with regards to how do you create just amazing customers. What are two biggest opportunities to provide amazing experiences and extraordinary experiences for guests? And it's funny because it's not actually with the guests, it's with the team. And he said, the first thing he said was, if you don't teach the vision day one, it's too late. If you don't get them, and if you don't create, anybody that enters your organization, and I'll even say this, they can enter your team. So like you may be promoted and you have one person that comes to work and becomes your direct report. It's HR's job, yes, to cast that vision and take them through the onboarding process. But when they get on the floor to your team, there is nothing stopping you from saying, hey, today's your first day with me. Today's your last first day with me. I'm going to make this day special. We're going to talk about, here's what we do in this cube. This is what we do here. This is what we're about here. Whatever happens outside, I don't know about that. HR told you about all that. But today, this is what we're doing here. And you cast that vision. And you set the expectations. You clarify, here's how we operate as a team. And you set those, there's nothing stopping anybody from doing that with anybody. Just because that's not your job, a leader steps up and does it. So from an orientation standpoint, that first day is super, super important. So we spent a lot of time trying to create a memorable first day for our team and make them feel important and make them feel that we're super excited that they are there to be with us. Secondly, so Horst said that. He said that they have it's their first day on the job is their last first day with Ritz-Carlton. And same with Chick-fil-A. Everybody who works at Chick-fil-A has only one first day. So make that day special and use that time to cast the vision right off the bat, first thing. Secondly is clear standards. I spent a lot of time clarifying what is expected from a hospitality standpoint to an operational standpoint, because the more clear, the more detailed, and the more clear I can be, the greater the performance of my team. People want to follow what's expected. And so it requires the leader to be incredibly clear. And then we have what we call organizational cadence. And I'm going to actually highlight the chamber on this. So Brent, the president, whenever he's in a meeting, what's the first thing he does?
Shares the mission.
Shares the mission. And then if you're in here, I don't know what time of the year you guys do this, but there's like all kinds of stuff written all across this board over here. And it's divided by months. And there's themes. And then they align all of their work around those themes. There's business journals, there's events, there's eggs and issues, there's all kinds of things that happen, and it's all planned, it's all timed, it's limited to a certain amount each month. There is a cadence to it. And that's a example of what I would call organizational cadence. That there are things that you do at certain times of the year consistently that reinforce the vision and reinforce and give you further more clear about who it is that you are, what it is that you do, why do you exist, what is it you're about. And so we at my organization we have a hiring schedule, we have onboarding at the same time every month, we have 2 team meetings at the same time every year. I mean we have a calendar for the whole year about what we do. And those things create the support and the structure for the team to be able to latch on and know and to hear what they need to hear consistently throughout the year. So, clarity. Finally, accountability. If you read any book about leadership, especially when it involves leading others, it'll tell you that no one person has more influence over the experience of a team member or the experience of an employee than their immediate supervisor. The immediate supervisor holds the keys. In my organization, I could be an amazing leader. I could be, well, I was going to say Steve Jobs. He wasn't that great. I mean, he was a visionary, but not the nicest guy. But I mean, I could be an amazing leader of my organization of 100 people. But the experience of my team at 8 o'clock and their manager that's overseeing them at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, that carries far more weight than the 2 team meetings that I have every year where I cast this awesome vision and I say, hey, rah, 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 rah. So from an accountability standpoint, Saturday, we did not run very well, particularly between 1 and 2. We had some challenges in our drive-through, and in the past, my initial reaction would be to find out who was working drive-through, why did they walk off, and why are they not doing this, and go after the team member. But I'm paying a manager to be there when I'm not there to make sure that they would do what I would do if I was there. And so if the team is not doing what they're supposed to do, I mean, there may be some issues we got to deal with. But it's the manager's fault. And the manager reported to me, and I don't know how to handle this, and I don't know what to do. I'm like, write yourself up. That's what you need to do. You need to take ownership. Like, they behave that way because you let them. Period. That it's the shift leader that we focus on holding accountable to leadership. Because that's who is, I mean, they're in charge. The manager's in charge of the shift. And if it goes bad, it's not my fault. I did my job. So, and then accountability also looks at building trust with your people by consistently maintaining standards. I said at the beginning, the moment you let somebody operate and become indirectly approved to operate outside the standards, and here's what indirect improvement looks like. They do it, I see it, I say nothing. Our standards have a name tag, and I walk in, and somebody doesn't have a name tag, and I talk to them, and I shake their hand, hey, how you doing? Good, good. And then I keep on going, and I don't say anything about it. That now, it doesn't automatically become acceptable, but the trust and other people are looking, and they're like, well, they're not saying anything to them. Trust goes down. So, building trust by consistently maintaining standards is also part of how we execute accountability. So making sure that team members are not doing what they're supposed to do. We act quickly. I mean, we don't embarrass people. Our goal is to have everybody perform well. But if they need to be removed, we remove them. It's hard. It sucks. It's hard. It's hard to remove people. But you got to do it. You got to do it. So, bottom line, organizations reflect their leader. They reflect them in values. They reflect them in behavior. They reflect them in character. They reflect them in belief. Chick-fil-A is really the embodiment of True Academy. If you were to do a study on Truett's life, and you were to track our company and what's important to our company, you could draw lines like, oh, he said that. Oh, that's why we do that. Oh, he lived this with me. Oh, he did that. Oh, that's why. It's incredible. And so sometimes a hard reality to face, because if your organization's not very good, my restaurant doesn't run well, and people consistently don't have good experiences, it's my fault. It's not my people's fault. It's my fault. Which ultimately, it's the great leadership that's behind great service. It's your ability to see that gap and work on closing that gap that ultimately has this trickle effect to the people around you, that you get to the customer and provide these outstanding experiences in these moments. So, we got 10 minutes. I did it. Close. Close enough. Yes, ma'am.
First, I just want to thank you for sharing your personal experience. I really believe that great leadership comes from people being able to touch, move, and inspire other people, and I felt all of that with this. So thank you. And I work with a ton of restaurants with Money Mailer, with what I do, and I've worked with you all in the past, and I talk about Chick-fil-A almost every single time I sit down with a restaurant. I'm like, listen, I know that you might think you're fine dining or whatever it is, but Chick-fil-A is going to do it right. They have the lines, people still go, but I sort of love it when I drive up to a line, because you got your people out there and it's raining and there's umbrellas and they have their iPads, and I'm like, hey, they're doing something about this. They're not just letting everybody stand in line forever. The flowers on the table, all of it, every element is just covered. And so, especially if I have a restaurant that's struggling, I'm like, listen, go to Chick-fil-A today on Mall Road and watch how they do it, and you're going to do a lot better. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I tell my team, Ben Franklin think it's Ben Franklin, so, somebody can fact check me on that. He said, or what did it say? The handshake of the host affects the taste of the roast. So if you think about that, if you go to a theoretical 5-star dining experience where you have the world famous chef, the highest quality ingredients, the best put together meal, won all the awards or whatever, and it's a jerk that's bringing it to you, like, it ain't gonna taste good. I don't care what's in it, I don't care what it is. But you could go to, an average place, but if that person is serving you really feels like you feel like they care for you and they're like attentive and they're engaging, like that meal's gonna taste way better. And you're gonna go back there. You're not gonna go back there. So, yes sir.
I can see that measurement's gotta be a key element, that you understand how you're doing. What are some of the actual measurement techniques that you use?
So we have some lead measures, lead and lag. We kind of have both of those. On the lead side, we measure food safety is really important. So we're doing a lot of measurement around food safety. Are we the behaviors showing up every day that will lead to a safe environment? We do quality measures. We assess our food right on the spot. And then on the lag measure, we have a customer survey that comes on the receipts, and so we leverage that data quite a bit. We obviously leverage business results. I mean, sales will grow if you treat people right. I mean, it's not rocket science. People want to go to places where they're treated, so sales growth is a huge indicator. So those are a few that I was just telling Heather earlier. So I'm a big Nick Saban fan, and if you go watch his first spring press conference of this year, he says this little thing about two minutes in that is just brilliant. And he's not the most eloquent guy, but he does what he does really, really good. And he talks about how you focus on outcomes, and I would sometimes lump data into that, especially if it's a lag measure. You focus on outcomes, you get distracted. The way to achieve the outcomes is to focus on the process, and to focus on the individual. So, Kendra, my new team member that worked last night, was she last night when she worked on our front counter from 5 to 8? Was she using the mood meter? Yes or no? I mean, that's the measurement that I am trying to focus more on, because if it's those measurements more consistently answer yes to those, that will produce the outcomes that we want: sales growth, or great people feeling cared for.
That's the quality, man.
Yeah. So yeah. Yes, sir.
In the Chick-fil-A culture, how do you work with people who aren't performing well?
The South is a big part of our culture and our DNA. And, bless your heart. You just kind of say bless your heart and do nothing. So that, I would say that's we probably culturally and historically have allowed some folks at the whole corporate level, but also in the individual restaurant level, have probably let some folks stay a little longer than they should. So I would say that we're kind of transitioning to being more having some hard cutoffs, but we have a model that assesses performance, and the model is called the ESRC model, and it takes you through what's E is an expectations. Have I been clear what I expected? S is, I forgot what S is. R is resources. Have I provided all the resources that I need? And you go to the ESRC, ESR. If it's a yes, I've done all these things, then the C is consequences. So, I can't make you do what you're supposed to do. I can make sure that I did everything that I need to do. So we do have a model that helps assess performance and eliminates any reason that would cause someone not to perform except for their own will. And that's something we can't. And so once we get to that point, then it's like, hey, you need to change, or we need to move you on. And now, obviously, if there's food safety, if there's, am I still alive? Okay. There's food safety and other things that come up, especially if it's a legal thing. If a team member is using drugs at work, or sexually harasses somebody, all of those things, like, you're gone. I mean, there is no rope on those things, so.
Okay.
Hey
Thanks, ma'am.
Dustin, would you touch upon the culture building things that you do outside the restaurant with your staff and some of the events that you've had?
Sure. I see full brawl. I've been there before. I've taken my some leaders there. We're actually, I do a couple of events throughout the year. So I have a senior dinner coming up where all of our seniors on staff, that are either seniors in high school, not senior citizens, but seniors in high school or college or graduating folks. I have them over to my house, make some steaks, and just kind of just celebrate. I give them a copy of the places that you might go from Dr. Seuss, and I write a little note in it. I read it to all of them. So just to kind of create a moment. It's a great story. If you haven't read that one in a while, man, it's about losing. It's good. But that's one thing I've got coming up. At our all-team meeting, we try to keep it celebration focused, so we highlight a bunch of team members and celebrate. I used to have a food truck. We had Marty's Waffles come to our one 2 weeks ago. Had Lita's Tacos, I think. Lita, is that it? That's opening. She's opening a spot. I've taken a group of leaders to Topgolf in May, just to go and have fun and celebrate, and taking another group to Dave Buster's, just as a token of thank you for some of the great results that we've had over the last couple of months. So those things like that, where you kind of foster community and celebrate. So, you have a question?
Yes, so many companies or providers of service, be it retail, restaurants, are using those surveys, and I just wonder what your thoughts are in terms of how well they reflect the actual thoughts and feelings that people have. It just seems like you're bombarded with them, and when they first started, you said, oh, I'll complete that, but now it's like,
Yeah, everybody's got it. Yeah, so I mean, I use those. I look at those. I don't look at them on a monthly basis because I'll get over a quarter. I'll get 400 something responses, and I'm not a statistician. I just know that we serve about 3,000 to 4,000 people a day, and so I have like 40-some thousand transactions a month, and so over 3 months I have like 100-some thousand transactions, and you figure 2 people per. So I'm like 200,000 or 300,000 people in a quarter, and I got 400 responses to a survey. I don't know, but it is a data point, and so I definitely use that, especially with problems and accuracy, and all the other thing I was saying, yeah, for Schulte, the 2 opportunities said onboarding, customer recovery, like equipping the frontline person to solve the problem for the customer, and empowering them, teaching them, training them how the guests feel, how them feel and empathize with the guest, and ensure the guest feels heard. Those 2 things. If you go to Ritz, tell one person a problem, and that person will be the one to follow up with you and has the power to do whatever they need to do to win you back. So excited. But yeah, so I use those, but I can walk in the restaurant and tell you when I stay on the front counter in an hour and I have 4 customers bring something back because we made a mistake. Like, I don't need a survey to tell me that. Like, there's a problem. So, yes, sir.
There seems to be such consistency in the disposition of your employees. It certainly wouldn't appear to me that you leave anybody there too long, as you said earlier. But how much of that, how much of filtering in the hiring process do you have to do in order to achieve that? Do you find that most of the people who apply don't have some sign of those dispositions, or how much filtering is there to get to that uniformity that you have?
So it's a process. So I'll refer back to when I was my first opportunity with Chick-fil-A here in Cincinnati was at Tower Place Mall downtown, and it was downtown. 2004. So those of you that have been around here, you know what happened shortly before that. So it was a challenging opportunity. And I inherited a team when I took over in October 2004 that the guy who I inherited from, he went down the sketch, not only 50 people on the team, it was a really small team, but he went down and told me all the positives about everybody. And when I got in and started working, months later, after some of these people had left, I found out that, one of the ladies was soliciting herself to the other members of the staff, and another gay gentleman was, had some illegal drug activity going on shift and off shift. And I mean, there were all kinds, and I'm like, dude, you told me all these people were good. I'm like, so over the course of 4 years, I looked at it as, okay, who are the worst? I need to remove them and replace them with just someone who's better, just people who are better than what I got. And then what happened, what I noticed over the years is that those folks kind of maintained, and then the new crop of people that I need to remove revealed themselves. And so got rid of them, replaced them with a little bit better than what I currently had. And over time, the team changed to create a dynamic, and there's almost internal pressure where I definitely have to speak up and say things, but that you don't like not say my pledge. I mean, you just don't. I mean, I don't have to. I tell them one time at the beginning, and everybody does it now. And so we don't hire the people that don't show up. So that's one thing for the interview. They don't show up for the interview. We don't hire them. And my folks, we do try to create steps. So we don't just have somebody walk in, apply, and then they start working that night. Like they apply, and then we call them and have a phone call, and then we say, okay, be here at this day at this time, and then they come, and so they have to come on a different day, and then we don't tell them right away. We say, okay, we'll call you in a week. And so, if they've committed to 4 or 5, 6 steps, we're pretty sure that they're going to stick around. And we say no to people. If there's a it's a no. I've hired those. Maybe, I mean, they could, if they, if you're justifying them in your mind. I've done that, hired them, bad decision. So at this point, we're like, no. If there's then we're done. So.
I want to thank Dustin, everybody. We're at the stopping time, so thank you so very much. On your